You people are all the same, always running a scam.
The cold October wind whipped Seraphina Vance's scarf across her face as she approached the gray stone steps of the Cedar Falls County Courthouse. It was 8:45 a.m., and the Ohio sky was the color of dull lead, threatening rain. She pulled her simple wool coat tighter, her gaze fixed on the entrance. The briefcase in her hand felt heavier than usual. It contained the internal investigation file on an Officer Donovan, a man she had never met but whose record of civilian complaints was deeply troubling. As the presiding judge, it was her duty to review it, but it had made for a grim weekend of reading. Standing near the restricted entrance were two officers. One, older, looked passive. The other, a younger man in a sharply pressed uniform, had an arrogant posture that seemed to radiate agitation. This, she assumed, was Donovan. Seraphina walked up the public sidewalk, her heels clicking on the damp pavement. As she neared the steps, she gave a polite, professional nod toward the officers. Donovan saw her. His eyes swept over her, a black woman in civilian clothes, no suit, heading for the employee entrance. He immediately profiled her, and his agitation found a target. He deliberately took one step to the side, physically blocking her path. "Can I help you, ma'am?" His voice was laced with condescension. "The public defender's office is around the back." Seraphina stopped, confused by the immediate assumption. "Excuse me, officer. I'm just trying to get to my chambers." Donovan actually scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "Your chambers?" He looked her up and down again. "Look, this entrance is for authorized personnel only. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you can take it somewhere else." The confrontation he clearly wanted was now fully engaged. Donovan's hand rests lightly on his holstered weapon. "State your business now, or I'm removing you from the premises." Can you feel the tension building as Officer Donovan puts his hand on his weapon? If you're still watching and feel the injustice that Seraphina is facing, please comment 8 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed to the Black Brilliance channel, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the bell, because you don't want to miss out on how Black Brilliance handles this incredibly tense situation. Your support helps us continue to create great stories to inspire you. Now, let's continue to see what happens. Seraphina stared at the officer, baffled by the immediate, unprovoked hostility. She clutched the handle of her briefcase. The file on this very man was inside it. His eyes were cold and flat, exactly the kind of eyes described in the civilian complaints she'd spent all weekend reading. Several courthouse employees, lawyers and clerks she recognized, were starting to walk past, their steps faltering as they watched the confrontation unfold nervously. She tried to maintain her judicial composure, but a cold anger was rising. "Officer," she said firmly, "I don't know what your problem is, but I work here. My name is—" Donovan cut her off with a sharp, derisive laugh. "You work here?" "Cleaning crew." He looked at his partner, Bishop, inviting him to share the joke. Bishop just looked uncomfortable. Donovan turned back to Seraphina. "You people are all the same, always running a scam." That was it. The racism was no longer an assumption. It was an accusation. "That's enough," Seraphina said, her voice dropping into the command tone she used from the bench. "I am ordering you to step aside." The word "ordering" triggered Donovan. His face purpled with rage. "You don't order me," he snapped. He swung his open hand and slapped her hard across the face. The sound cracked in the cold morning air, sharp and ugly. Seraphina's head snapped back, the sting bringing tears to her eyes. Her briefcase flew from her grip. The clasp burst open, scattering her judicial papers, including the Donovan investigation file, across the wet, dirty steps. The crowd gasped. The papers, symbols of the very law he was sworn to uphold, were now being trampled under his boots. Donovan grabbed her arms, twisting them painfully behind her back. "That's it. You're resisting arrest. You assaulted an officer." The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Seraphina's wrists, the humiliation stinging far worse than the bruise forming on her cheek. As Officer Donovan shoved her inside through a side door, she saw him sneer at her scattered papers, now soaking in the drizzle that had begun to fall. She was pushed past the main security desk, and for a fraction of a second, She made eye contact with the lead bailiff, Henderson, a 20-year veteran she saw every day. His eyes widened in recognition and pure, unadulterated horror before he quickly looked away, his face pale. She was processed in a cold, sterile room, then led into courtroom 3A. It was 9:15 a.m. The room, with its dark wood paneling and high ceilings, was her domain, but today she was led to the defendant's table. She sat, disheveled and handcuffed, but her mind was sharp, silent, and calculating. On the bench sat Judge Arthur Gable, a visiting judge in his late 60s, pale and near retirement, who looked annoyed by the disruption to his morning docket. "What is this, officer?" Gable asked, looking over his glasses. "Get this nonsense sorted quickly." Officer Donovan stepped forward, radiating a smug, false professionalism. He was sworn in and began his testimony. "Your Honor," Donovan lied smoothly, "the defendant was attempting to breach security. She refused to identify herself, became verbally aggressive, and when I attempted to detain her, she struck me. We suspect she may be under the influence." Judge Gable, representing the old guard that implicitly trusted a uniform, turned to Officer Bishop, who looked visibly nervous but was ready to lie. "Do you corroborate this?" Bishop nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." She was acting erratically. Officer Donovan showed remarkable restraint. Donovan, finishing his testimony, looked directly at Seraphina with undisguised contempt. "Your Honor, these people always claim to be victims. It's a disgrace to this courthouse." Judge Gable nodded gravely, clearly believing every word. "Thank you, officers." "Miss Vance, do you have anything to say for yourself before I set your bail?" Incredibly, Judge Gable believed those lies. If you are still watching this video and feel the weight of the injustice that Seraphina is facing, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you are there. And if you haven't subscribed to the Black Brilliance channel, I highly recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell immediately. You won't want to miss the moment Black Brilliance turns the tables in the next chapter. Your support helps us continue to create great content to inform and inspire you. Now let's continue. Seraphina Vance met Judge Gable's dismissive gaze, and for the first time that morning, she spoke with the full, unwavering authority of her office. The air in courtroom 3A was thick with tension. Officer Donovan was smirking, anticipating his win. Judge Gable, impatient, was already reaching for his bail forms. By the judge's chamber's door, Bailiff Henderson, who had previously looked away, was now standing rigidly, his hand trembling near the door handle. "Yes, Your Honor, I do," Seraphina said calmly. Her voice cut through the room. "First, I would like to address Officer Donovan." "Officer, you testified under oath that I struck you." Donovan, outraged at her audacity, interrupted. "Your Honor, is she allowed to question me?" "I am not questioning you." Seraphina's voice was suddenly steel. "I am stating a fact. You committed perjury." Judge Gable banged his gavel, his face reddening. "Ma'am, you will show respect. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." Seraphina stood up slowly, the legs of the wooden chair scraping the floor. She looked at Gable. "Judge Gable, you are in my courtroom. And you are sitting in my chair." Gable froze, his hand hovering over the gavel. Donovan stopped smirking. Seraphina nodded to the bailiff, who had been waiting for this signal. "Bailiff Henderson, please resume order." Henderson took a deep breath, his voice booming with relief and authority. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Seraphina Vance, presiding judge of the Cedar Falls County Court, is now presiding. The announcement was the pivot point of the entire day. Donovan's and Gable's faces drained of all color. They stared, horrified, as Seraphina, her handcuffs still glinting, walked past them. She ascended the dais and stood behind the high-backed leather chair that was rightfully hers. Seraphina stands behind her chair, looking down at the men who assaulted and lied about her. "Bailiff, remove these handcuffs." "And Judge Gable, you may step down." Now seated in her rightful chair, the bruised side of her face illuminated by the bench light, Judge Seraphina Vance looked down at the men who had, minutes before, held her captive. Everyone in the courtroom was still standing, frozen in shock. Officer Donovan was visibly shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. Officer Bishop looked like he was about to faint. Judge Gable, horrified, had stumbled off the dais and was standing near the prosecutor's table. "Bailiff," Judge Vance said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Please call the IT department and have them immediately pull the security footage from the front entrance, cameras 1 and 3, from 8:45 a.m. this morning. Display it on the main screen." Donovan's head snapped up, his panic palpable. "Your Honor." "Judge," he stammered, "there must be a mistake. The cameras, they malfunction." "Wait. They malfunction, officer?" Judge Vance's voice was cold. "We'll see." Moments later, the large courtroom monitor flickered to life. The entire room watched in absolute silence. The footage was crystal clear. It showed Seraphina's polite nod. It showed Donovan deliberately blocking her path. It showed his verbal abuse. And then, it showed the unprovoked, brutal slap. The video clearly showed her papers scattering across the steps, the very papers Donovan had trampled. Judge Vance paused the video on the exact moment of the slap, the image of Donovan's open hand frozen on Seraphina's face. "Officer Donovan, you testified under oath," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "that I struck you. The word for that, officer, is perjury." She looked at Officer Bishop. "And you, Officer Bishop, testified that he showed remarkable restraint. The word for that is accessory to perjury." Bailiff, detain both officers. The sound of Officer Donovan and Officer Bishop being placed in handcuffs echoed the sound Seraphina herself had endured less than an hour ago. The courtroom was now packed. Clerks, lawyers, and staff, having heard the commotion, had quietly filled the gallery to witness the unthinkable. Judge Gable watched from the sidelines, his face a mask of deep shame. Donovan and Bishop stood defeated in custody. Judge Vance addressed the silent courtroom. "This morning," she began, her voice steady and clear, "Officer Donovan did not see a judge. He did not see a courthouse employee. He did not even see a citizen. He saw only a black woman, whom he felt he could assault and lie about with impunity." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "What Officer Donovan did not know," she continued, "is that I was personally overseeing a formal investigation into his pattern of racial bias and excessive force. His actions today were not an anomaly. They were the proof." She then delivered the judgment, her eyes fixed on the two officers. "Officer Donovan, you are charged with perjury, battery, obstruction of justice, and violation of civil rights under color of law. Officer Bishop, you are charged with perjury and obstruction. You will both be held without bail pending your federal trial." Judge Vance looked directly at Donovan. "You assumed I was powerless. You assumed I was nobody. You were wrong. That is the cost of judgment based on prejudice." She lifted her gavel. "My name is Judge Seraphina Vance. This is my courthouse. And in my courthouse, justice will be served. Court is adjourned." She brought the gavel down. The echo of Judge Vance's gavel brought a powerful silence, marking not just the end of one officer's reign of prejudice, but the restoration of justice itself. It's a profound reminder that when we allow judgment to cloud our vision, we often fail to see the truth standing right in front of us. True character, like justice, is never defined by the clothes we wear or the color of our skin, but by the integrity of our actions. The world is full of hidden strength and brilliance. If Judge Vance's courage resonated with you, please share your thoughts on this story in the comments below and subscribe to Black Brilliance for more powerful stories that deserve to be heard.